Hello there, everybody. Welcome to episode 39 of the Don't Be Ridiculous podcast. Jeremy Palmer and Clark Palmer here with you. We have an NBA champion.
Yep.
Amazingly enough, this season has come to an end. The season, anyway. There's still more. There's always NBA craziness to come, but the Golden State Warriors are the champions. So what are your initial thoughts on the series we just had?
So let's see. I think it was kind of interesting that there were it's really after the Boston Brooklyn series. I think there were more and more people started saying, well, they're the best team left, or they're the best team in the Eastern Conference, or whoever wins the series between the Bucks and the Celtics is going to win the championship. And that sort of started, and I can understand why. They did some really good stuff on defense, but it just it started to get a little ridiculous because we got to the finals, and first of all, it took them 7 games to beat Milwaukee without Chris Middleton. They choked away Game 5 against Milwaukee. They almost lost the series. I mean, if not for Jason Tatum just nailing a bunch of threes in the second half of that game, they probably would have lost that series. So, and then they play Miami, and Miami just offensively, they're a really limited team, and it took the Celtics 7 games to beat them. And a lot of that was because they were turning the ball over and they were not executing on offense. So then you had seemingly a chorus of people saying, well, the Celtics are the better team, against the Warriors. And it just became like, well, they're the better team. They just have to stop beating themselves. Yet they kept beating themselves. So it reaches a point where it's like, well, they just got to stop beating themselves. It's like, yeah, but that's what they do. So that you have to bake that in when you're analyzing this team and sort of ranking this team against Golden State. And so it was like basically Golden State, Golden State didn't screw around as much as Boston did. And some of that's experience. Some of that's, they just don't have a offensive creator on their team, really. They try to have Marcus Smart be the point guard, and that's not really what he's good at. They try to have Tatum do it at times, and he's, it's hit or miss with him. So, when you just factor in everything, it seemed like Golden State was the better team. If Boston hadn't been beating themselves, then maybe we would have had a different result. But that's just that's what they did. That's what they did throughout the playoffs. That was their kind of Achilles heel, if you will. So, it seems like the better team won because Golden State just basically they ramped up their defense as the series went on, and then Draymond Green played better the last 2 to 3 games. He was just more active, and then you just had Wiggins was really consistent throughout the series. He had one really good game, and Steph Curry, put him away in that last game. So, I'm sure there's more, but
yeah, no, I think I think it was a fascinating series from game to game. From how it went, I think that my just simple big picture thought is that the Warriors got better as the series went along and the Celtics didn't. I went back and rewatched the second half of the last 3 games 4, 5, and 6.
Oh, okay.
And I initially thought in Game 4, like Boston's going to be kicking themselves, and that's what I thought about the last 3 games. That Boston is going to be kicking themselves because this was there. It was in front of them. They had opportunities to win this series, even with all of the sloppy play and the turnovers.
Yeah.
And it's all of these, it's not like they did one, the Warriors just did a bunch of things better than them. It's just, they did these little things that were just better than them. They rebounded better when they needed it. They were always able to get, when the Warriors needed a quality look, they got a quality look. When, you needed to execute on offense, the Celtics never really adjusted to what the Warriors were doing. The Celtics were able on defense to limit the Warriors a little bit. They were keeping them around 105 points pretty much. But offensively, Boston was all over the place. They never really figured out what the Warriors were doing. And after, the series kind of flipped in that game 4, where all of a sudden the Warriors basically stopped. Well, not stopped, but they started to limit the Celtics' penetration. It was basically the Celtics, we're going to go to the basket, we're going to go to the basket, we're going to go to the basket, and the Warriors weren't putting up enough resistance. And then what they started doing, starting game 4, they just sent more help. They got more guys in their way. And
there was some good individual defense. I thought Klay Thompson was doing a good job moving his feet and staying in front of people. Andrew Wiggins did a good job when he was on. Let's be careful, or people talk about this too much like it's the 90s. When Wiggins was on Jason Tatum, if he got switched onto him or whatever, he was, because this is not the 90s anymore. It's not just one guy on one guy. It's kind of it's a team defense, and the Warriors, they've got a system that they've been in for. I mean, the guys who've been there the longest, they've obviously been in it, and then the other guys on their team who've come up with it, who've come up through that system, they know what they're supposed to do, and there's no. There's no panic because they've been there before. Because Steve Kerr's been there before. Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson have been there before. And these other guys, they're just getting experience. And because of the guys around them not freaking out, then the younger guys aren't really freaking out. I mean, some guys may not be as effective as they were. Like Jordan Poole wasn't as good in the finals as he was in the playoffs and in the regular season, but he was still effective, I thought he kind of got a little better as the series went on. So,
yeah. So let's we'll break down the Warriors first, and then we'll just to talk about the Celtics.
Okay.
Well, first of all, out to the audience, Clark and I, we called this Warriors in 6.
That's true. You know what? I was kind of. I'll be honest with you. Going into Game 6, I was like, okay, I called this. I kind of want another game just because there's not going to be any more basketball for a few months, and that's kind of that way. It's kind of that way every year. But I was but going into Game 6, I was a little nervous. I didn't know if the Warriors could. So going into Game 6, I was a little nervous. But I mean, it ended up working out. So
yeah. So I think that what I saw from Game 2, starting with Game 2, what I noticed was that I thought that this series was going to come down to the Warriors' defense was going to have to win it for them. Because I could see that the Warriors offense was going to struggle a little bit. They weren't going to get 120 points every game. And so that's where I kind of thought, okay, this is going to come down to the Warriors defense. Now, what I was surprised at was the Warriors defense ended up being better than the Celtics defense, which that really surprised me. I didn't see that coming.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that comes down to experience, and they just knew what they were doing, I guess. So,
yeah. I think that the other thing was that you really noticed, once they won the title, was that, man, what a great job by the Warriors front office to turn Kevin Durant leaving into Andrew Wiggins, and not only Andrew Wiggins, but they did the sign and trade with Durant to get D'Angelo Russell, and then they turned D'Angelo Russell into Wiggins and Jonathan Kuminga.
Yep.
The draft pick from last season. So, man, what an incredible! It's like it's not one of those moves, and I thought, oh boy, that was kind of smart at the time. But never in a million years did I think this is going to be one of the keys to them winning the championship. Just ridiculous, amazing. Smart teams just do really smart stuff.
Well, yeah, that's why. I remember when they did the D'Angelo Russell thing, I was like, some people were criticizing. I remember Rick Bucher thinking, oh, this is a reach. This doesn't make any sense. And I was kind of like, well, I mean, they got something for Kevin Durant leaving, and then if he works out, great. If not, if he just goes in there and is productive, then you can probably move him for something else. And then I remembered hearing that Russell wanted to play in Minnesota. And so I was like, okay, Like maybe you go move him for Andrew Wiggins. Like I was actually thinking that, and I was like, because if you can get him, then he can just be the third or fourth guy, and he can just play defense and hit threes. And I'm like, and that'll be pretty good. Like that'll be a pretty good thing for him because he hasn't met his potential in Minnesota. And then I remember when they actually made the trade for him, Nick Wright was like, "Oh, they're never going to win anything again. This is ridiculous. I don't know why you're picking Andrew Wiggins." And I just didn't get it at the time. I was like, guys, like he doesn't have to be the main guy. Like I felt like people were criticizing him like he had to be the main guy. He didn't have to be the main guy. He just had to do what he did in the finals. Just play defense, give him some offense at times, and then he had pretty much every series he had one like really good game. That's plenty.
Yeah, no, I think I think it was. I thought it was a really good move at the time. Now, again, I never did I think that this was going to be. It would be this important. I never thought in a million years that this was the case. But it turned out to be a really, really smart move, and they probably don't win it without him.
Yep.
So it's just he basically kind of filled in what they needed, right? They're not getting Klay Thompson is not playing defense the same way that he was before he got injured, so that he kind of replaces that, and then you get the extra rebounding, which they always need rebounding because they're playing small a lot, and then you've got a guy who can make an open shot, and every team in the NBA needs that guy. So it just, and also it doesn't reflect very well on Minnesota that they gave up, they get D'Angelo Russell and they give up Wiggins, who's a better all-around player, as long as you're not asking him to be the best guy, and the draft pick, which could end up being huge when we talk about, the Warriors' future. So, it's a pretty incredible move. Going back to the turnovers, I couldn't believe that the Celtics turned the ball over that much. I know that's that's not really it's partly because of the Warriors, but it's mostly because of the Celtics just can't. I mean, they can't dribble. Number one, that's amazing that you don't have enough guys who can dribble on your team. And
the shocking thing to me was after the Miami series, a couple of the games Miami won, Boston was just giving the ball away. Like in game one against Miami, they just gave the ball away. So it was like,
right. Yeah, they would drive into traffic, and then they'd get the ball stripped. And you would think, like, at some point they would have, the coaches are telling them this needs to be fixed. That's what's happening. But yet they continue to do the same thing. And rewatching the games, they would drive in, they'd see, help's going to come. Like, you see how the Warriors are playing defense, they're going to help. And so then as soon as the help came, it was as if they weren't prepared for it. Like they had never seen it before. It was just like, so I think experience really, really played into this because, a smart team or a smarter team would have figured this out.
Yeah.
Obviously
experience too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Knowing what to do and being confident in it, I think has a lot to do with it. And, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, they're young guys. It's hard to, I can't imagine they've seen, defense like that before. It's just a different level in the finals. The other thing was that, obviously after the championship, all anybody's talking about is, where's Steph Curry rank all time and what's his legacy and blah, blah, blah. And listen, I'm not one of those people that really enjoys talking about that. I think it's good for sports radio, but it's kind of a pointless topic. But I will say that I do think this is the best I think Curry's ever played. When you add in the defense, what he was doing on defense, and how much more physically strong he is, compared to what he was. I think this is right up there. And, I think, Charles Barkley said this the next day. Well, he's the best small guard in the NBA, in the history of the NBA. And, I was always one of those, well, you can't put Curry above Isaiah Thomas and you can't put him above Dwayne Wade. And, I think maybe I was proven wrong there, because offensively, those guys just, they didn't generate what Curry does offensively. I mean, he's on the short list of greatest offensive engines of all time. He's right up there with any offensive player you want to add it, you want to talk about. And then when you add in how much better his defense is, look, he's never going to be, on an NBA all defensive team, but he's so much better than he used to be. And in Game 6, the defense he was playing on Jason Tatum, I mean, Jason Tatum couldn't get by Steph Curry, which is, I think it's partly Curry and I think it's a little bit, Tatum, but it's pretty impressive the way he was defending. And they're like, no, we're going to go at him one-on-one. It's like, yeah, I think he's past that. I don't think he's the guy that you hunt anymore.
Yeah. You kind of, especially he got like 6 turnovers in Game 6, I think, or Tatum had 6 turnovers when he was.
Yeah, he had the most turnovers ever in the playoffs.
Yeah,
in the history of the playoffs, he had 100 turnovers in the finals. It's just I don't know how you win when you do that. I don't know how you figure that out. The other thing was that the Warriors are they're really set up for the next 2 or 3 years. With if Wiseman ever plays, they got Kuminga, they got Moses Moody. Like those 3 guys didn't even play in the series, and Jordan Poole looks like he's going to be, at worst, he's going to be a reliable guy to score off the bench. So they're going to be really good. I don't know how the hell they're going to pay for it all. They've got the highest luxury tax bill of all time, and Jordan Poole is going to get paid, and Wiggins is going to want an extension. And I have no idea how they make this work.
Well,
but if they can keep
they're selling out the arena, so I don't know.
If they keep the core together, they're going to be contenders for years to come. It's never going to be like it was 3-4 years ago where they're just basically unbeatable. It's never going to be like that. But this team is scary good, and it is a dynasty. Like, I don't care. I heard Bill Simmons on his podcast after the game, saying, "Oh, it's not a dynasty because they were in the lottery one of the years," and and it's like, no, man, I'm sorry, 4 titles in 8 years. That's it. It's right up there with top 6, 7 teams of in the history of the league. So it's definitely a dynasty. There's no doubt about it. But what do you think about future wise? I mean, what do you think about their
I think some people are getting ahead of themselves. Like, I think they're thinking that they're back to what they were, and like you were saying, they're not back to what they were. And the other thing is, it's like how long is Steph Curry going to be this level, like, elite guy? Because he's been playing for a while now. Draymond Green, how much longer is he going to be able to play the kind of defense that they need? Clay, I think, will be better next year. I think offensively he'll be a little more consistent, and then I just think he'll get more. He'll get maybe a little more of his quickness back, so that'll help. But I just think the thing that people are missing here is you got all these other young guys, but it's like, okay, you're still being led by Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green. So, are you saying that those younger guys are going to take over and be like the leaders of the team? That I'm not sure of, just because I haven't seen it. So, that would be kind of the thing that I would have a question about moving forward. Like, how much, because Jordan Poole is pretty bad on defense. James Wiseman can't stay healthy. Kuminga we just haven't seen, so I just don't know.
Right.
So I think those are kind of the questions. But I feel like next year they can contend, and then maybe the year after that, and then beyond that, it's going to depend on all those younger guys. How far along, how much they develop. So we'll see. Yeah,
it's crazy that you can have a team with Hall of Famers on it, as your best players, and have this coming behind them. It's just I don't know that any you want to talk about well-run, well-designed teams. I don't know that any team has this kind of youth and depth and all of that stuff. It's pretty amazing. So yeah, I think, I'm really, really excited, because the Warriors are fun to watch. I know that there's this reservoir of hate that people have because, well, they thought it was too easy before and all of that. Well, that's not what this is, and the way that I love how we overreact to all these games in the moment. And when the Celtics were up 2-1, it was just, oh geez, I don't know. They can't score enough. Who's going to score? Blah, blah, blah. And, they basically dominate the last 3 games. So it's crazy how that works.
I do think I'll point this out about the Warriors. Like, one of the things is I think everybody's thinking that, they're back. And I think that that's going to be a thing because, like, if they lose next year, for instance, people are going to be like, oh, well, and they're going to try to do some whole shifting the goalpost thing and taking credit away from them or something. So just something to watch for. I'm predicting that that's going to happen if they lose,
Yeah. So, I have a lot of thoughts on the Celtics. So number one, I was not, I'm impressed they got as far as they did. I was not a Celtics believer, from the beginning of the playoffs. And I didn't really like the people talking about, well, the Celtics, this defense from the Celtics is it's historically great and blah, blah, blah. I think we went way overboard and jumped the gun on that. The offensive teams that they played before they got to the finals were nothing to shake a stick at. We saw what Brooklyn was. Milwaukee struggles on offense normally when they have Middleton, and they didn't even have him. And then Miami was basically a broken down mess. So this defense that everyone's saying is fantastic, they really weren't tested, up until they got to the finals. I will say Robert Williams is fantastic. He's going to be an all defensive team center pretty soon here. If he can stay healthy. That was one of the things I was really concerned about from the Celtics is that the guy had knee surgery 6 weeks ago. And I mean, are they ruining, I'm watching it going, are they ruining this guy's career by playing him like they are? Because he was getting banged up and falling down constantly. I was like, man, I don't know. This may have been a little bit of a mistake.
Isaiah Thomas, remember he had a hip thing and then he kept playing and and then he was never the same.
Yeah, Isaiah Thomas, but at least he's a small guy at least. But yeah, that was one thing I was concerned about. So yeah, their defense, the Warriors' defense is better. I think it's pretty obvious. And now, granted, I understand the Warriors' defense got to play the Celtics' offense, so I understand that But no one was. I'm not saying the Warriors' defense is all time great. I'm just saying they're better than this Boston defense, which everyone was telling me was unbelievable. Until a team started moving the ball against them, and the whole thing changed. Yes, they had to play Steph Curry. I understand that, and there's just not a whole lot of answers. But it made no sense to me during the Miami series. Why are they not double teaming Jimmy Butler every single time, especially in the fourth quarter? They only have one guy. At least with the Warriors, if you double team Curry, you see what happens. They move the ball, they'll get an open shot, and you're in trouble. You can't just straight up double team him. So I get that. The other thing is Marcus Smart was terrible. I don't know what happened. I don't know where his head was at, but his idea of defense was basically, let me just bump into people and fall down. That's what I'm going to do. I couldn't believe it. He was actually kind of okay on offense, but, if you have Marcus Smart taking a bunch of shots, that's a problem. But on I don't know. He's supposed to be the defensive player of the year, and it's just I don't know what the hell's going on. And then he lost his mind on the referees in Game 5 and, getting technicals called on him. I mean, and then it's Jordan Poole was flopping, and got some calls. I think it's fair to say the Celtics, there were a few calls that they probably didn't go their way, but just the way he played was absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. Yeah, he did a lot of flopping. And he didn't get the calls, and he would flop at the wrong times where he had too many fouls or something. So,
yeah, it just kind of blew my mind that the way that he played, it's just like, this guy's supposed to be really good at defense, and Draymond Green was eating his lunch.
yeah,
It was like, just amazing to me. Yeah, and like I said before, the Celtics never learned about driving into a crowd. They just continued to do it and continued to lose the ball. The only time they actually, like, Jaylen Brown seemed to kind of figure it out, where he was like, all right, I'm just going to drive as far as I can, and then I'm just going to shoot. I'm not going to try to go by 2-3 people. I'm just going to, but it never changed. The last 3 games of the series, it never changed the whole series. They kept trying to do it anyway. And it's like, I don't know what and I guess we can talk about Jason Tatum, like, do we just chalk it up to experience and he's young and he'll learn? Or because he didn't even look like he wanted to shoot in the second halves of these games.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe he's not one of those, but I don't know. I mean, LeBron had games like that.
Right.
And he got better over time. This was his first finals. LeBron didn't play very well in his first or second finals. So he's only 24, so I'd kind of give him some time. And people tend to play armchair psychologist, where they just kind of go, oh, he's not shooting, so it doesn't look like he wants to shoot. It's like, I don't know. It's tough to really say. I think people jump the gun, during the playoffs. Are like, oh, he's this and this and this, and it's like, well, it kind of reminds me of LeBron the first year with Miami. Throughout the playoffs, he just kept shooting threes, and he was making them, and a lot of times they were bad shots, but he kept making them. So at a certain point, you're just like, oh, okay, all right, and Tatum, he made shots in some big games, but when they weren't blowing teams out, if they didn't have guys making shots, they weren't going to win.
Right.
So it's just kind of, I don't know. It's one of those things where I don't want to jump out on a limb. I just want to say, well, he's only 24. I need to see more. This is the farthest he's made it in the playoffs. Let's see. They've kind of figured out their defense is good. It's not that it's bad or anything. Their defense is good.
Right.
They've kind of figured out some things, but maybe they're a couple pieces away or one piece away or something. So let's see what they do. Let's see if, comes back next year and he's got some experience and, maybe he gets better. I don't know.
Yeah. I think, I think I think there's concerns. I think I have concerns, but nothing that's overwhelming that I don't feel like, and this is a theme that you and I have talked about before, is that I think people were being a little too harsh on Tatum. I mean, part of it is, this is what it is. When you're the best player on the team, this is kind of what happens. But at the same time, I'm not freaking out about, the way he played. I think he needs to get better. Needs to get better at driving to the basket. Needs to get better at finishing around, when there's defenders in the area. Needs to get better at, kind of getting to a different spot and not just taking the ball at half, beyond the 3-point line and then just trying to shoot step backs. I think he's got to, he's got to work on some things. And so I think it's okay to say that, and also to say this guy might end up being a really great player. He's probably not, but in this series, it was the gap between Steph Curry and everyone else was fairly obvious, right? The Warriors had clearly the best player, and then you could say by the end of the series that Wiggins and Jordan Poole were outplaying Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. You just so it ended up the Warriors really had the 2 best players in this series, and when you have. You've got Wiggins playing better than Tatum or Brown, and you got Draymond Green playing better than Marcus Smart. It just makes it pretty much impossible for you to win the series.
Well,
so
with Tatum, I would just say that, let's see, he's in year, was this 5?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I mean, okay, if we get to year 8 and we're asking the same questions, then it becomes like, okay, is this just what he is? But it's too early. I think we need.
I think he's got. I think he's got basically 7-8 years of his prime to go, and so he's got. This is your window right here. This is where we find out. Is this guy got, what it takes? I think his. I hate to be. I think it's very simple. His game is just not up to the level that it needs to be yet.
Yeah,
and that's okay when you're 24. Like, it's acceptable. When you're not playing, it's not like he's playing with, Kobe won the title when he was 24, but he's playing with Shaq. When he was younger than 24, actually. Dwayne Wade won the title when he was 24, playing with Shaq. If you're not playing with another great player who's better than you, it's going to be really hard to win titles. But I mean, I guess my bigger concern with Boston is that, they don't have 5 guys that I really trust. This whole playoffs, that was my argument.
Right.
They don't have 5 guys, and by the time we got through the playoffs, they basically had 6. They had their starting 5 and Derek White, and they would put Peyton Pritchard in there, but they were yanking him like crazy because you can't. It's really hard for him to hack it. When we get to this point of the playoffs. So I think looking forward to next season. Like, if I was the Celtics, if I was the general manager, I'd be trying to get somebody who can be like a backup point guard, somebody who is actually a real point guard. I'm not talking about the way we describe point guard today, where we think Russell Westbrook's a point guard. Like, I'm talking somebody who can create, but they don't have they're not going to have a lot of money to pay somebody that's great. So you're going to have to get somebody who can kind of come off the bench in the game and then maybe play with your finishing unit at the end. So a guy like Ricky Rubio, or a guy like, obviously Rondo's a little too old, but somebody like that, older, it's probably going to have to be a, older, point guard. You can't, not going to be able to play 40 minutes, but I think they need somebody when things break down who can kind of orchestrate and kind of tell everybody where to go and get guys the ball where they need it. They need a traditional creator because Marcus Smart's not cutting it.
Yeah.
It's nice to call him the point guard, but he's not really running the offense. We're basically giving the ball to Tatum and basically saying you've got to do everything, and it's really not going to work for them. The other thing is shooting. I think they need They need to get a guy who's like a dead-eye shooter. They need to get somebody who's a specialist that can make open shots, because the Celtics, they had 2 quarters in the whole series where they really shot the ball well. Other than that, it was pretty weak. The fourth quarter of Game 1 and then the third quarter of Game 5. Other than that, they really struggled. And teams are going to make Al Horford and Marcus Smart, make shots. And if they don't make them, the Celtics are their offense really, really struggles. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I mean, and also with guys like Al Horford, I don't know how much more you're going to get out of Al Horford. Maybe another year. So I kind of think that they're maybe they have a window here, next year. I mean, granted they have some younger guys, but they have to make some moves. So we'll see what they do, and then maybe they can give themselves like a 4 year window where maybe they can contend in the Eastern Conference, because Milwaukee could potentially get worse. I mean, Giannis isn't going to get worse, but they the rest of the guys around Giannis, Middleton, and Holiday, they could get worse, or they could get moved, or they may not get re-signed or something. So in Miami, they'll be there, but unless they make some big move, they're a beatable team. So, and then beyond that, it's just like Philadelphia. Philadelphia is always a mess, so can they not be a mess? And then we'll see. Brooklyn, I don't expect much from, because you're relying on Ben Simmons, and we've covered that ad nauseum. That's not really a good idea. But
yeah, I guess my overall feeling is I don't think the Celtics need big changes. I just think a little tweak here and there. I think, and the way their roster is, there's not a whole lot of moves that they can make. It works out for them that, they made that trade for Derek White. They've got Robert Williams basically signed. They've got Tatum and Brown for 2 more years the way they are. So they're in pretty good shape. They just need some moves around the edges. So, and that kind of leads into, talking about next season. The NBA is more wide open than I've ever seen it before. To me, what the list I wrote down, and I wrote down that there's eight contenders who could get to the finals. 8 teams that I think they could get to the finals. And if you can get to the finals, you can win the championship. So I had the Warriors and Boston, obviously. They just played in this series. Denver, the Clippers, Phoenix, Dallas, Philly, and Miami. And I didn't even include Brooklyn. And I guess I'd have to be smart, but I guess I probably should include Brooklyn. So, that's 9 right there. So it's however you want to dice it up. There's at least 8, the way that I see it. So I think this is, I was talking about this on the last episode or two, that I think we got it. We got a new league. Like this is a new NBA. So, if we're going to look at what moves teams should make, there's very few times where I would say swing for the fences, try to hit a home run, go for the big name. I really wouldn't do that. Like I wouldn't mortgage, if I was any of those contenders I just named, I would not mortgage my future for anybody, because who the hell knows? Like we thought Phoenix was clearly the best team and they completely fell apart.
Yeah.
So, we really don't know. So I think that we're going to be looking at a lot of moves on the edges, because I don't think there's a big move that's like, oh, well, if they got this guy, that would change everything. You can always say that, and we kind of have to wait until we start, sizing up the contenders. We kind of have to wait to see what moves there are. But, I was looking at, what, as far as first of all, what do you think about the contenders I listed? And, do you have any other thoughts about?
That's a good list. You didn't put Miami on there?
I did.
You did? Okay.
I didn't put Brooklyn on there, which
right.
I probably should have.
Yeah. Again, I think that there may be some moves on the margins, like a trade. Maybe not even a free agent signing, just a trade or something that might shift things a little bit. Because a lot of these teams, they may just need, some move on the margins for more defense or more shooting, or somebody to be like a creator on offense, and that could push them, to another level. So, again, I don't know what move is out there, but I'm just going to kind of say that there'll probably be something that we're a little surprised by, or that some move that doesn't get a lot of attention but ends up being a big deal.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the main, from what I, just doing a little bit of research, the main guys that I think are going to be talked about in the offseason is, Zach LaVine. He actually is a free agent. I think he can opt out and be a free agent. So that may be an interesting discussion there. And then everybody's going to talk about Donovan Mitchell because of what happened in Utah, and does he want to stay there? And then everybody's going to talk about Bradley Beal because he's got an option for 1 year, so he can take the option. They can still trade, they can still trade him anyway, even if he doesn't want to be a free agent. So I think those are the main guys. But I honestly, if you asked me to put my money on it, I would say I don't think any of those guys are going anywhere. Unless Donovan Mitchell comes out and literally says, same thing with Bradley Beal, Donovan Mitchell, Bradley Beal. Unless either one of those guys comes out and says, I don't want to be here, I want you to get rid of me, they're probably going to stay where they are. And, does anybody go crazy and offer a bunch of money to Zach LaVine? The other thing is, there's not a lot of teams with cap space. Yeah. The teams with cap space are all bad teams, like Detroit, Orlando, So I don't know that there's going to be a huge move. I think it's going to be little things here and there, like Dallas traded for Christian Wood from Houston, which gives them a center that can shoot threes, and they knew they needed to improve their center position. That was their main thing that they said after the playoffs were over. And so now they got a guy who can he can do what they wanted Porzingis to do, but doesn't cost anywhere near as much money.
Right.
So I think it's going to be stuff like that happens. And so I'm really excited to see what happens in free agency. And, like some of those contenders, especially Denver and the Clippers, they're getting guys back that were injured. Denver's going to have their whole team, hopefully, at least have Jamal Murray back. I don't know about Porter, but and then the Clippers, hopefully they'll get whatever they're going to get out of Kawhi. Hopefully they'll get it from him next year, and so it makes it a really exciting mix.
Yeah, that's one. Yeah, again, it's the thing with some of these moves. A lot of it's speculation, which is fun, but it's just like with Damian Lillard and Donovan Mitchell and Bradley Beal. They got to say they want to be traded, and so far we haven't heard anything close to that. Like Damian Lillard has expressed maybe some frustration. I don't even know what word you would use. Like a little bit of frustration because he wants to win. That's not the same as wanting to be traded, So
right, and in Utah, maybe Utah brings in a new coach that Donovan Mitchell likes.
Yeah.
They fired Quinn Snyder decided to resign. So, maybe it's just down to they bring in the right coach and he stays there. Bradley Beal has said the whole time he wants to stay in Washington.
Yep.
There's nobody saying he's not saying he wants to leave. So yeah, I don't know that there's going to be it kind of makes me laugh. I think that we've always expected this. Oh, well, just go out and get somebody else. That doesn't really exist. And I think a lot of these teams are pretty smart now, which is going to make it really hard on teams like the Lakers that need to just dump Russell Westbrook. And so it's going to be hard, but there's, as they say, there's a sucker born every minute. So, but I looked at the Vegas odds. Actually, Golden State was first, best chance to win the title next year, and Brooklyn was second, which that kind of made me chuckle. That it's amazing. We're going to stick with this. That Brooklyn has some kind of chance. I don't know I'm not sure in what world that they do. The way their team is constructed now, I don't know. Like if everybody plays, well, we'll see. I don't know what the odds of that happening are.
Yeah. Yeah, it's well, remember those are Vegas odds, so they just want people to bet on stuff, and I think that they think people will bet on that. They'll bet on that, or they don't want to. They think a lot of people will bet on Brooklyn, so they don't want to give Brooklyn really good odds. Like if you were to win, and then you would, yeah. Well, so again, I just want to hold out hope because we'll see. Sometimes stuff comes out of nowhere that you don't expect, and it could, it could at least be fun to talk about. It may not change anything, but like with the Lakers, for instance, I could really care less where they trade Russell Westbrook, but it's kind of interesting. I mean, look, if you have Anthony Davis and LeBron in certain series, I would think the Lakers would have a chance. So, but we'll see.
Yeah. All right. So, any more NBA stuff you want to mention? I mean, I went over the Dallas trade. That's really the only thing. That's the only other move that happened.
We'll see what. We got the draft coming up, but it's just, the way the draft is now, you kind of got to wait 2 or 3 years usually for some guy to make an impact. So, and then free agency, we'll see. Free agency, a lot of times it can be kind of fun. So.
Yep, absolutely. The other topic that I had, we talked about this a little bit on the last show about Live Golf and the PGA Tour, and so they finished the U.S. Open today, and needless to say, none of the Live golfers did very well. Nobody made the leaderboard on Sunday. I think I don't know. I didn't pay much attention, but Phil Mickelson didn't play well. Dustin Johnson didn't really play well. So and so we were talking about this, and I kind of had to get a little more information on it. And this is just in general, this is going to be really bad for golf because I don't know what's going to happen with the majors. We got one. We get the British Open left, which nobody's going to be kicked out of that, but the majors are all their own entities, basically. The PGA Tour has really no control over who plays in those. So it's really up to the individual tournaments what they want to do. So we'll see what happens with that. If they can't play in the majors, that just dramatically changes the entire thing. And, I think that basically the players kind of did this, joining the Live Tour not only for the money, the amount of money they're going to get, which is astronomical. They did it because they want a bigger piece of the pie. which is what they weren't getting from the PGA Tour. And so, real quick, I completely understand everybody who thinks it's disgusting that they take the Saudis' money and play in this thing. Completely get it. I agree. I would not, if this were me, I wouldn't do it either. I realize that's easy for me to say. Nobody's offering me, $150 million. I get it. I understand how that sounds, but by the same token, I don't have a problem with them doing it because I just feel like I think it's hypocritical to come out and bash the golfers for doing something that a lot of our athletes do anyway. Our women's basketball players have to go to all kinds of other countries that, aren't fantastic, to try to make more money. And, we're sending our World Cup, the men's World Cup athletes, the soccer players, over to Qatar, in November. And, that's a complete mess. That's a country that's rife with all kinds of scandal and all kinds of other stuff. So, I get their wanting to do it. I think they're taking major risks with it because you could basically be kicked out of the only tour that anybody cares about.
Yeah.
That to the side, right? However you feel about that is, completely understand that. But those things to the side, what I'm fascinated by is what is the PGA Tour going to do? I mean, right now they're taking the stance, well, it's a human rights issue, and they're basically saying, listen, you never had to apologize for being on the PGA Tour. But I'm not sure where the PGA Tour's bottom line is at, because it's like you're just going to let these guys, the best players, and we're just going to let them walk? Like, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, you wouldn't, if you're the NBA, you wouldn't, you do whatever you have to do to keep LeBron James in your league, right? It just doesn't. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is here. I get what the players are. I get what the players think they're doing. Like, Rick Riley was on Colin Cowherd, and he basically was like, Phil is the dumbest smart person that I know. He's like, he thinks he's going to revolutionize golf with this tour. And it's like, Phil, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, first of all, he's 52 years old. He's not going to revolutionize anything. And I'm not sure, like, I just don't quite understand where his head's at. And I don't understand where Greg Norman's head's at. Greg Norman's the CEO of the Live Tour. And I think he's under the same delusion. We're going to completely change everything. If you don't have the PGA Tour on board, I don't know how this changes. So I unloaded a lot there on you. So go ahead, wherever you want to go.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'll say is that a lot of times, really rich people tend to be out of touch with a lot of stuff because in order to get really rich, you got to be focused on whatever it is you're doing to make yourself really rich. So you spend a lot of time on that to the exclusion of other stuff. So that's why a lot of times I don't like athletes talking about political stuff, because they don't have time to educate themselves on that. They're focused on their sport, and their families, Right. So it's not surprising to me that they would compartmentalize the things, because they maybe just don't know that much about it, and their focus is different than the rest of us would be. The rest of whatever the focus the rest of us would have on this type of issue. So I mean, I kind of talked about it last week. I wouldn't do it. I don't think they should do it. I get why they want more control over the PGA, but that's where you kind of negotiate with the PGA. And maybe this is a way to do that, but the PGA, you're right, they definitely need to take whatever steps they need to take to keep these guys in it, because that's what people want to see. And it's not like the fact that they make as much money as they do is kind of crazy, because it's not like it's a huge sport.
Right.
It's watched at certain times by certain people. And it's only, like, I always find it funny when, like, I was watching I don't know if it was I think it was the U.S. Open one time, and I think Jim Nantz was one of the commentators, and he's like, oh, when this guy wins this tournament, it's going to totally change his life. And I just remember that stuck in my head because I was thinking, yeah, it's going to change his life among a certain group of people.
Right.
And I guess you can kind of say that about anybody, but it's a little different with like basketball and football because way more people know who the best players in basketball and football are.
Right.
In golf. So it's just like, it's kind of an insular kind of deal. But, I understand why, but, again, I went over it last time. I'm against it, but I think the PGA should probably take whatever steps they need to keep these guys in it because you can say what you want about the way the PGA Tour treats them or whatever. The biggest events that have the biggest historical significance, are in the PGA Tour. Well, I guess they're not technically in the PGA Tour, but it's the majors, the U.S. Open, the British Open, the Masters, and the PGA. So if they get kicked out of those, then it's kind of like, well, you should probably go back because those are kind of big historic events that you don't have.
That's kind of the linchpin of the whole thing. Is what do the majors do individually? Like if they next year, if they kick these guys out, then because I just don't. What's the audience going to be for these live golf events with no history, no tradition, no nothing, and they don't even have a TV sponsor right now? Like they're live streaming it on YouTube. So I'm not. So yeah, I think it's a really big problem for golf, and I'm not sure. And it by the way, it's a public relations nightmare. Like I watched Phil Mickelson did a press conference before the U.S. Open, and every single question was about, how do you feel about the 9/11 families and you're supporting Saudi Arabia, and how do you feel? And so it's just, I don't know. Did you guys think this out before you did it? Because in a lot of the quotes by some of the people involved have been terrible. Greg Norman, they asked him about, Saudi Arabia murdering the journalist, and we all make mistakes. It's just, it's so bad. It's comically bad. It's just, what are you doing?
Again, that goes to my point about how it's kind of an insular thing, and they've been so focused on making money, they don't know about this other stuff. Like, they don't know what to,
Yeah, and so they asked Rick Riley about it, and he's like, Greg Norman will screw this up. Like, it's like, he's going to screw this up. Get ready. Like, he will. Like, he feels like he's been so mistreated because he lost all those tournaments the way he did and all of this stuff, and he's wanted this for 20 years. He's like, but, so just, it's so funny because Rick Riley doesn't really work for anybody, so he can just say whatever. So if you haven't heard it, go back and listen to either Rick Riley on the Colin Cowherd show or on the Rich Eisen show, and it was absolutely hysterical the way he just bashes these other golfers.
Yeah, that's what he said about Dustin Johnson. He's like Dustin Johnson doesn't care about this stuff. All he sees is like hit ball toward hole or whatever he said.
Yeah, he doesn't know where Saudi Arabia is on a map, and he's so dense that light bends around him. Like, he just has no clue what's going on. It's just so yeah. I don't know. Like, I think what's funny is like the most interesting or noteworthy thing that might come out of Live Golf is the terrible sound bites that these guys give at press conferences. Yeah, so that's really all I had to say about the PGA Tour thing. The other thing that I wanted to, this is kind of an ongoing thing that I wanted to comment on was, Deshaun Watson's ongoing mess. So, they, like, why they're talking to the media about this, I have no idea, but some Cleveland reporters, and I listened to a little bit of it, Cleveland, after practice, they were asking him some questions, and honestly, they were pretty much softballs, but, he did basically say, listen, I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't hurt anybody. Didn't make anybody feel uncomfortable, blah, blah, blah. And we're up to, 26 cases now. And it's just kind of this thing. It's this kind of staring game now where it's like, at some point the NFL needs to do something. Like there's no possible way in my mind, the NFL can let him actually play when we get to week 1. So we'll see what happens. They reported like he he basically said, well, the number of massage therapists he saw was like in the 40s, and it came out there were 66 of them. So it's it continues to be disturbing, and I think we talked about last time that maybe Deshaun Watson never plays in the NFL, but I think we need to start putting this up there with Cleveland making this move. And it's being reported that Cleveland didn't do any research on this, really. They talked to Deshaun Watson and his lawyer, and that was it. They didn't really go through the whole thing of getting the information about every case. And so it's just kind of like, it's mind-blowing. It's absolutely mind-blowing. Like, you may have traded for this guy and guaranteed his contract just out of pure stupidity. And it's just... it blows my mind, and you burned the bridge with Baker Mayfield already. So I'm not sure how this is going to work, but to me, the NFL is in a world of pain if they do not suspend him. I just don't see any way they can let him play this season because the cases aren't going to be till after the season's over. So after all that, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so we have the drive part 2, and now the contract. The trade? I don't know. Like, you got Jose Mesa blowing Game 7. You got I'm trying to think of other bad Cleveland stuff, but I don't know. I mean, there's too much to count. I mean, they were weren't they up 3-1 on the Cubs when the Cubs won the World Series?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just classic Cleveland sports, screwing stuff up.
And I think Jimmy Haslam, the way he's looked at in the league is that, what the hell's wrong with this guy? And I just, man, it just amazes me. And we'll see how it goes. I mean, we got, like a month, a little more than a month until training camp. So I'm fascinated from it. I'm fascinated in this story from this standpoint to see what the NFL does. I'm not fascinated in Deshaun Watson's mess of a life. And I think that, part of me just hopes he gets what's coming to him, because this is absolutely insane that it's gotten to this point. So, anyway.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of, at first I was kind of like, I don't know if the NFL is going to do anything, but now I'm kind of like, they're going to do something, and it may be...
They have to.
A lot. Like,
this is a public relations, again, Live Golf, this is a public relations nightmare. They just can't allow this to just go on. He's going to go out there week 1 and everything's fine. Like, the Cleveland fans aren't happy about this. So this could be a serious issue. So, that's pretty much all I had. But before I go, just a couple of TV recommendations. Season 3 of Barry on HBO. Pretty good. Fascinating ending. Season 4 of Stranger Things. Well, the part of season 4 that's out. That's been really good, as always. And I'm watching The Offer on Paramount Plus, which is about the making of The Godfather. And, the making of The Godfather is interesting that story is interesting by itself. So it's not really like they have to stretch anything, to do this series about it. So, but it's pretty fascinating. But anyway, yep, that's all I got for episode 39.
Yeah, I'll just say the Peaky Blinders season 6.
Yeah,
not that good. But I guess they're setting up. They're going to have a Peaky Blinders movie. So I don't know. And then the other thing was on Netflix. There's a movie called Hustle or The Hustle.
Oh, with Adam Sandler.
Yeah, I watched that today. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I liked it. I watched it too. Adam Sandler plays an NBA scout, and he ends up scouting. And the basketball scenes were with real basketball players.
Yeah.
So they were actually really well done. The guy, the main star of the movie, the basketball player wise, is Juancho Hernan Gomez, which he played in the NBA for a little while. And but Anthony Edwards is in it, and he's really good. And I enjoyed it. Different than most Adam Sandler movies. I think he does really good stuff. But yeah, it was pretty interesting. The basketball scenes were excellent.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. See you next time.